What's your view on it? I mean, I tend to agree with him. I think the days of Jack Walker coming in and buying his hometown club and bankrolling them to the Premier League title, it's just not going to happen anymore, is it?
No, look, I mean, it's not often I disagree with Simon. I listen to the show every day and listen back if I don't listen to it live. But I agree it doesn't have to be an emotional investment. But I just think if you take over a football club, the word is responsibility. Because it's more than just a business. Of course, it's a business, but it's more than just a business. It's a community. You're representing what, talking Manchester United, fans around the world, not just in Manchester, but any particular club, whether it be in the Premier League or the EFL. This, I don't want to go as far as to say is their life, but it means so much to them in their life. And when you've got a set of owners who are clearly don't care, clearly not looking to try and help and renovate the stadium, the training ground, not looking to put more money in, have put the minimum amount of money in, are taking money out. Yes, money has been spent, and we've mentioned, haven't we, on the Premier League All Access podcast, that they're not the only ones to blame at Manchester United. The blame should be shared around to a point, but the buck does stop with them. And to turn around and say it's a business, well, I'm sorry, that to me shows really what type of human beings they are. The fact that they don't care about people. And I think you can still have a business and be a successful business person, businessman, businesswoman, without having to go down the route that they're clearly going down. They don't care one jot about Manchester United football fans. And I think that's a real shame. But ruthless people, maybe that's naive for me, ruthless people will turn around and say, well, it's a business, they're making lots of money out of it. Billions.
Well, you're preaching to the converted when it comes to Glazers. I'll have my say on them in a moment. There has been an equaliser, though, in the game that's currently live over on talkSPORT 2. Bradford look like they've rescued a point in the 89th minute. Alex Gilliard, great finish from outside the penalty area to make it Bradford 1, Grimsby 1. Looks like Bradford's unbeaten home record will stand, and it will mean Grimsby still without an away win this season. They're into 6 added minutes. Commentary continues over on talkSPORT 2. The Glazer situation is fascinating because it feels like anybody who isn't a Manchester United fan just thinks that Manchester United supporters whinging because they've got this sense of entitlement. They'll point to the fact that the Glazers have spent more money than anybody else when it comes to English football over the last, decade or so. I think it's £1 billion. I
think it was 1.19 billion, wasn't it?
Yeah. But I mean, for me,
they
have, but it's not their own money, and that's the big problem when it comes to Manchester United. The Glazers still haven't put a single penny of their own funds into the football club. Everything they spend is profit that the football club would generate. They're really bad sellers. We've seen that in this transfer window. The fact they couldn't shift Harry Maguire, the fact they were asking too much money for Scott McTominay,
is that the Glazers' fault?
A player that Erik Ten Hag clearly doesn't fancy. Well, is that lack of attachment that you say, that lack of duty of care? Because for me, there's loads of issues with Manchester United. It was always going to be difficult to replace Sir Alex Ferguson. Numerous managers have tried and failed. They also lost David Gill at the same time. And I think that was a huge issue because the people who've come into that position since just haven't had the football brain that David Gill had. So to replace those two was always going to be tough. But they did it from a position of strength, the Glazers. The last team that Sir Alex Ferguson managed won the Premier League, and they won it quite comfortably, if you remember, despite the fact it wasn't a vintage Manchester United team. The decline since then, they've gone from being the powerhouse in English football, one of the powerhouses in European football. They're not even the powerhouse in Manchester or the North West now. Liverpool and Manchester City have both overtaken them. Arsenal, in the last couple of years, have overtaken them. Chelsea, if they get their spending right, really should have overtaken them when you look how much money they've spent since Todd Boehly came in. And then you've got clubs like Newcastle and maybe even Brighton, who are much better run by someone who does care deeply about the football club in Tony Bloom than the Glazers. They are falling behind, and all the time the Glazers are there, these parasites right at the top of the food chain. It isn't going to get any better because they're not interested in winning Premier League titles. They're not interested in challenging for the Champions League. They're happy to be in that competition and to take the riches that come with it, but they don't care about success on the pitch. Not sure they care too much about the image of the football club. The fact they left the Mason Greenwood situation to people like Richard Arnold, the CEO, and almost washed their hands of that. They're doing the same, I think, when it comes to Jadon Sancho. There's a spat developing now between Ten Hag and his player. And I don't want to hark back to Ferguson because people are saying, well, he's not there anymore. But none of this would be happening if Sir Alex Ferguson and David Gill were still there. The dereliction of care of that football club, the stadium's falling apart. The training ground isn't up to scratch when you compare it to the likes of Manchester City. I can't find anything positive to say about the Glazers.
Yeah, but apart from all that,
Apart from that.
No, look.
But, I mean, pick holes in the argument.
No, I can't pick many holes at all, Crookie. I just said what I said, and so I'm with you. And trust me, I'm not a Manchester United fan, but looking from the outside, really the biggest club in this country, and I think the second biggest club in the world should be.
It's embarrassing for English football that Manchester United have fallen so far into decline. It is.
No, it's not embarrassing for English football.
It's
embarrassing for
Manchester
United,
club of
not
England.
for English football.
They used to be the flagship club of
get
English
back
football.
up there. English football, I'm sorry, Man City are there, Liverpool are there, Arsenal are trying to get there, Chelsea have been there. It's down to Manchester United. I wouldn't say it's embarrassing for English football, but what I would say is Manchester United is almost like the beacon. It's the biggest club, and even though they haven't been doing well for so long, it's all around the world as well. Manchester United. But look. I think
they couldn't even host a Champions League final now, Old Trafford, because the tunnel's in the wrong place. They haven't bothered to put a giant screen inside the stadium. I mean, how humiliating is that for Manchester United? They can't even be considered to host a Champions League final because these owners can't be bothered to do their job properly and bring the stadium up to scratch.
Listen, I'm now going to start playing devil's advocate here. They could turn around and say, well, we spent a lot of that money on players. 1.19 billion
but again,
pounds
it's not their money
over the last decade. Well,
if they did put some of their money into the football club,
who's going to come in and then say, oh, by the way, I'm going to buy this for $6 billion and I'm going to put my own money in there? Manchester United is one of the biggest clubs in the world. It generates its own money, so whoever's in charge is not always going to be spending their own money.
There's a lot of owners in the Premier League who write off money their own.
Listen, I do agree with you. The stadium and the training ground, there's absolutely no excuse for it, but they're not the only ones to blame. The lack of good recruitment, and you're right, shocking selling has been really poor. You can say the buck stops at them because
why are
they've
these
employed.
people still in situ? These people who've made bad decisions in the transfer market.
Well,
why have they not been fired?
Anymore, is he?
Well, it took long enough to get rid of him.
Well, he's not there anymore. But
Ten Hag's basically doing the transfers, so why do we need this transfer committee above him? He's signing all his own players.
Well, actually, we discussed that, didn't we, on the pod about it seems to be having a big influence, and that's fine. But actually, if you look at some of his players, the jury's still out, Crookie, on that. So his judgment can still be called into question right now. Look, from top to bottom, Manchester United is a million miles where it was under Fergie. And I do get what you're saying totally about the Glazers. I don't think you have to be a supporter of the club, but you do have to care about what you've got, because this is more than just a business. It's not your business that you started from scratch, and if it goes, then you're the only one going to lose out. This is an institution football club, one of the biggest around the world. There has to be a bigger responsibility. There has to be a duty of care. They don't care, clearly.
And you know what? Just finally, because I could talk about this for the rest of the programme, and probably non-Manchester United fans would either be bored or they just think I was talking nonsense, but I'm not. But this lack of care, I think, is highlighted by the facade that the football club was up for sale. I remember speaking to Adrian Durham. I stood outside a hotel in Qatar when the news broke they were looking for investment, may even sell. And I was told then by somebody at another football club, they're not going to sell. No one's going to pay them the £6 billion they want. And they've been proved absolutely right. And actually, the whole process has caused divisions within the fan base, because some people wanted Sir Jim Ratcliffe, some people wanted the Qataris. Ultimately, there was no point in hanging your hat on either potential buyer, because Joel and Avram Glazer do not want to sell the football club. And by turning it into an X Factor audition, again, it just drags the club's good name through the mud, honestly.